This video is just to give you a very basic overview of image editing, either on a PC, tablet or mobile phone, and just to give you an overview of the sort of things that you can do with very, very limited computer knowledge, such as red eye removal, straighten photos, bringing the brightness and contrast levels up, and that sort of thing. There are various types of image files that you can get, and I've classified them for simplicity here as web, general PC files, and then application specific. With web you'll be familiar with things like JPEG and GIF, and you've got the animated type with GIF as well, and what's known as PNGs or portable network graphics. With PC you have file formats such as bitmaps, TIFFs, which are often quite large in size, and quite often your digital camera might save them in TIFF format, and also the RAW camera format where you get very, very high uncompressed images. And then you've got application-specific formats such as PDFs, which can store pictures, PSDs, the PhotoShop format, and then other formats such as XCF. Let's start with JPEG, which is probably the most common file format that people know. Most mobile phones will take pictures in this format. It's what's known as lossy compression. So you can see from the pictures below where compression is applied at various different levels. The higher the compression level, the smaller the file size, but the more pixelation that you get. With JPEGs you can store up to 16 million colours. It's what's known as 24-bit. You've also got 32-bit file formats as well as 16-bit. And this is predominantly used for photographs. And when you're looking at websites, you want to try and get the compromise between decent quality and small file size. Even with today's broadband, you still want to make the images as small as you possibly can, because Google will actually penalise sites if they're heavy on graphics where they don't necessarily need to be. The next most popular graphic format on the web is GIF. It's actually pronounced GIF, but everyone calls it GIF. It's an 8-bit format, which means it's limited to 256 colours. But as you can see from the globe icon, you can have animations, and this is effectively a slideshow of still images condensed into one file. Now you can specify one transparent colour, so for logos this is quite good because you can have say a 1 or 2 colour logo with the outer area as transparent, so if you're putting it on top of something else you can actually show the background through it. And they're also very small in size, so if you're saving a file in GIF format rather than a JPEG, for example, it can be significantly smaller, and that's great for logos. But as you can see from Sunflowers, it's not so good for photographs. The third most popular graphic format used online is PNG, or portable network graphic. Now the good thing about these is they can store large numbers of colours in images, because they can be either 24 or 32-bit, so 16 million plus colours. Also they support 256 levels of alpha channel, so that's 256 levels of transparency for each colour. So if you were to paint out the background of an image and needed to feather the fading in from the edges, you can do that with PNG, and you can't do that with GIFs. So they're very, very good for logos when you've got complex logos. And you can see in the image below we've got that picture of the dice. That's actually got a transparent background with it, and we can actually overlay that over something else and the background would show through. And that's the good thing about PNG, but the bad side is the file size. It's often much more than a JPEG or a GIF would be. Earlier I mentioned some other file formats, and I just want to talk about 3 of these very, very quickly. These are the other types you might come across. We've got the .RAW, which if you've got a high-end camera, it can save those in that format, and these are uncompressed, very, very large. So where you might have, say, a 2 or 3 meg JPEG image stored on the camera, if you save the equivalent RAW file, it'll probably be 4 or 5 times the size. But you do get very, very high levels of detail with no compression there, so you don't get the lossy artifacts that you often get, or the corruption that you'll see with a JPEG image, especially the more compression that you apply. TIFF files as well, they tend to be used in the print industry, and they are CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow and black. Again, they're uncompressed, although you can apply compression to them, and again you get very high levels of detail and very large files. And then finally PSD, this is a format that I use regularly, which is the layered PhotoShop format, which is proprietary to Adobe, but many other applications can read them. Before we move on to some of these software demonstrations, I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between megapixels versus megabytes, because a lot of people don't understand this, and it's important to understand the difference between the two and what both actually mean. Let's start with bytes, megabytes, kilobytes, etc. This is obviously storage, and the confusing thing is if you're talking about disk storage, then we're talking thousands, and if we're talking RAM storage or memory storage on a computer, we're talking 1024 sections. Now, 1 byte is effectively 1 character, so imagine 1 letter on the page. You type that into Word or something, and that is 1 byte. So an A4 page of text is probably 1 or 2 kilobytes in terms of size. Now, if you imagine that these days smartphones often have 16 gigabytes of space as standard, it shows how far we've come in terms of storage. So the little triangle at the bottom here gives you an idea of the order of things. It's very similar in the way it goes up to millimeters, centimeters, kilometers, etc. It's bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes. Let's now take a look at megapixels, which relates to the size of the image that you're taking. So 1 pixel is 1 dot, and 1 megapixel is 1 million pixels. So an 8 megapixel camera is generally 3,264 pixels wide by 2,448 pixels high. Now, it stands to reason, obviously, therefore, the bigger the megapixels, the more megabytes that they will require on your device. This chart visualizes this quite well. You can see on the left-hand side we've got the various standard resolution sizes. So if you take a look at the 8 megapixel in blue, which is 3264 by 2448 that we looked at earlier, if you compare that, say, to a 16 megapixel camera, you get an idea of the physical difference in size of those images if you were to look at them on a screen. You can also see the diagonal lines which signify the aspect ratio. So whether it's letterbox style of 16 by 9 or the old-fashioned TV size of 4 by 3. So the next question would be, what software would you use to edit photos? Now, on Windows there's many products out there. We'll take a quick look at Photoshop. I'll also mention a product called GIMP. There's also another one called Paint.net, and also Picasa, which, although it's limited in its editing capabilities, it's still very good for most of the things that most people will want to do, such as getting rid of red eye, straightening images, brightening them up, etc. I'm not too familiar with Mac myself, but the most popular applications are iPhoto and Photoshop. I believe iPhoto actually ships as standard free with any new Mac computer. And moving on to iOS, you've again got iPhoto and Photoshop Express as 2 options, but there are plenty of editing tools out there on iOS, many of which are free. Also consider Linux and Android. There's plenty of products suitable for those as well. Of course, before you start editing your photos, you've actually got to get them onto the equipment that you want to start editing them on. Now, if we start with Windows, there's 2 ways you can do this. One is you can use an app to do it automatically, and Picasa, for example, does this very well. As soon as you connect a camera of any description, even a mobile phone, Picasa will detect it. It'll read all of the files on there and ask you which ones you want to transfer. It'll even sort out duplicates as well, so you can't transfer them twice. The second way is when you connect a digital camera, it comes up as a hard drive on your computer in Windows Explorer, and you can literally just open the folder and drag and drop the contents over to your computer ready for editing. You could, of course, open them directly on the device's storage from within the app, but you really want to be doing it on the computer. So copy the files over from the device to the computer and then edit those versions. Let's move on to editing some images now, and we're going to start with iOS and the iPhoto app. We're going to start by editing this old photo. You can see there's some crease lines and there's a few marks on there, and we can use one of the brushes. You can see here there's a variety of brushes, so we'll use the repair tool and we just literally swipe our finger across, and you'll see that it sort of blurs it out. And it finds the edge details of the crease and blends it with everything else. But there are times when this won't work, and you'll see very shortly when we swipe over the mouth. We'll just clean up these other areas out here. Then we'll zoom in again. If we swipe from left to right here across the teeth, you'll see it doesn't have the desired effect, so we have to click on the undo button at the top in order to get it back again. So let's carry on cleaning out some of these lighter creases and marks here. And if we compare the original to the new one, you'll see that there's a marked improvement already just for literally 1 minute's work. We're going to apply two other little enhancements to this particular picture here. We're going to straighten it and then use the auto enhance feature. So firstly we're going to use the straighten tool, and you can see here that it draws that grid and reshapes it, but it will actually enlarge the image a little bit, so you will lose a little bit of quality. Next we'll use auto enhance, and you'll see that it changes the blues. They're a little bit more blue and concentrated. If we compare that with the original image, hopefully you'll agree that it's again a little bit of an improvement there. There's a variety of different effects that come with products such as iPhoto, so let's apply a few of them to this image now. We'll start by cropping this a little bit, and then we'll use the straighten tool. So just to focus on what we want to see. Then you can change things like the brightness and contrast. The great thing about all of this is it's non-destructive as well. So you can apply all of these changes. You've got various levels of undo, and you can just undo straight back to the original image. And when you save it, it actually saves it as a new image as well, so the original image is unaffected. So you can see here we're changing the color mix. Now obviously we're using extreme versions here, but you can just tweak it just a little bit if you want it. For example, if you took it at a certain point of day and it was too bright or too dark, you can just tweak the colors a little bit. You can see here some of the special effects that are available as well. Some of them are quite extreme, and you can just tweak between them. Now the great thing about apps these days is if you own multiple devices, you can use the same app on tablets and phones. So I've got iPhoto here and I'm applying auto enhance, and again it's just the power of having these tools in your pocket, which previously, if you roll back 20 years, you'd only see this in high-end editing companies. So if we open up another image here, this is the famous Chocky Wocky Doodah store in London, and again if we use the auto enhance tool, you can see these blacks really darken up, and it's much more lifelike now rather than the slightly washed out photo that we had previously. Again, the iPhoto app for the iPhone has pretty much all of the functionality of the iPad app as well, just in a smaller interface. We're going to dip into Adobe PhotoShop now and show you some of the more powerful tools that will allow you to do things like removing these creases in the photo, clean the stain on the shirt, and also clean up the edges. So to clean up this image, we have a variety of different tools available to us in something like Adobe PhotoShop. This is Adobe PhotoShop CS4, which is not the latest version. So we've got things like the cloning tool, but I'm going to use the healing brush tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on this area here. We're going to try and get rid of some of this. We'll just zoom out a little bit more. Oh, that's a bit too much. Let's just zoom in on that bit there. Right, so we select the healing brush tool. The first thing you have to do is press down the Alt key and select an area that you want to heal from. So this gives me a nice blank canvas area here. And now you'll see as I move this over here, it literally just magically removes it and replaces it and blends it. Blends is probably a more appropriate term to use. It's not a replacement. That would be the this tool here. But it blends it with the selected area. Now this can work against you if you select an area like this and then blend there. You'll see that you get that, which obviously we don't want. So I'll press Ctrl and Z to undo that. Alt and click, and then I'm reselecting there and cleaning up. So if we zoom out on this area now, you'll see that's all cleaned up there. Let's have a go at this stain here. I'll again use the healing tool, but I'm going to change the brush size to give myself a little bit more finesse in doing this. I'll select this white patch here, and you have to be quite specific with selecting the area, because I've only got a little patch to work with. I can make that a little bit bigger first. The other tool, of course, you can use as well is things like the dodge and burn tool. So if we use this, again that's a bit too big, let's make that nice and small. This will automatically just brighten that area a little bit. The burn tool effectively darkens it, as the name might suggest. So that's another way that you can quite easily clean something up. So you could dodge it first and then use this tool to brighten it a little bit further, as you can see. Of course, all of these are undoable here. Each stage in Photoshop you can actually go back, which is a very, very powerful way to edit things. I spent about 15 minutes cleaning this image up, and you can see the before and after clearly. On the right hand side I've spent some time cleaning up the frame of the picture so it's a little bit whiter. I didn't want to make it crystal clear because obviously this is an old photo, but we wanted to capture the essence of the photo rather than looking at the wear and tear on the photo that you see in the first image. I'm sure everyone's had red-eye photos at some time or another, and this is caused where you're using a camera where the flash is very close to the lens. So when the flash fires and the light is reflected back from the back of the eye, the lens captures it. And for this example, we're going to use Google's free Picasa tool, which has got a fantastic red-eye removal tool. So we'll start with this image here, and as you can see this has got a particularly bad case of red-eye. So all we do is click on the red-eye tool, and Google Picasa will automatically locate the red eyes and remove them for you. All you have to do is click on apply, and that's done. So if we go back, you can see if you look at the small image it looks pretty normal, and even close up it looks pretty good as well. So it's a massive improvement over the original image. We're going to stay with Picasa for a second and straighten this wonky picture. Let's select our image and click on the straighten tool, and we get this grid across the screen, and we can now just literally just drag and drop to whichever way we want there. Just slide it over, and I think that's probably about right. Click on apply, and there it is. And of course we've got the ability to undo that tool if you want to. There's a variety of other tools available in Picasa that give you quite a lot of capabilities. I'm feeling lucky is a bit like their Google search. Click on that and it will try to automatically adjust the photo with the best contrast and colour and brightness settings as well. And you can undo that as well if you want to. Personally I think it's better with it, so it's quite good. And you've got some other controls here, some automatic filters you can apply like sepia, black and white, etc. And some that are less useful really. Using the same tools that we used earlier in Photoshop, we can quite easily remove these electric cables from the skyline and also the mountain range, as well as the metal fence rail that can be seen in the bottom left corner. We're going to start again using our healing brush, and there's a variety of different options here, but we're going to stick with the standard healing brush tool, and we'll zoom in a little bit here. I'll make the brush a little bit larger, and again I'll press the Alt key to select a little bit of the blue, and it's just a case of moving down like this, and you can see it disappears. Now where it gets a bit more complex is where it's going through here, and we can cheat a little bit because something like a tree you're not going to check every individual leaf. So if I select that area here and move across here like that, when I let go, okay, there's a slight distortion there, but to be honest you probably wouldn't notice that. So I can carry on doing that across here. Again, it actually looks like there's a break in the branch there, but you could quite easily fill that in, and you really generally wouldn't notice that. So I'll zoom out, and that one to all intents and purposes has gone. We could do the same down here very quickly. Again, press the Alt key to select our area, and this is where it'll get a little bit tricky. If I select that now, you can see that's not really the desired effect, so I'll undo that and I'll clean up the area that I can clean up quite easily. I'll go over that other bit in a second. And then if I select directly above, so it's in line, you can see there. Now, that's not so good there because of the colouring match. But if we zoom in a little bit and make the selection area smaller, again press the Alt key, and zoom out, you'd be hard pushed to notice that in general. I spent about 10 minutes cleaning this picture up completely, and as you can see from the image on the right hand side, it looks completely different now. In summary, you've seen that there's plenty of free apps out there on all of the different platforms that will allow you to do most of the basic editing functions, such as red eye removal, removing objects from backgrounds, changing brightness, contrast, automatically enhancing the image, straightening the image, etc. Now obviously if you want to do something a bit more advanced, such as removing a person from an image, for example, you're going to need a bit more of a professional tool such as Photoshop, but there are really good alternatives out there. All of these things do have a bit of a learning curve, but of course you've got YouTube at your disposal, and all of them have got various tutorials online that you can follow. Before I finish this video, I wanted to share with you some of the apps that I also use with regards to editing photos that I think are really good to have on a mobile phone. And the first one is Microsoft PhotoSynth. This allows you to make a 3D panoramic image literally just by holding your phone up, taking a snap and then moving it to the next position, and it draws on the screen where you should move the phone to, so it's very, very easy. You can then share your photos online so that others can see them, and it's free on iOS. It's not yet available on Android, but there are alternatives such as Photosphere out there that will do the same job. This next app, called Photocast, is available as a free and paid for version, which is £1.99 on iOS. Now it requires a Google Chromecast, which is this small HDMI dongle that plugs into your TV. It's available for under £30 and it allows you to stream content such as Netflix, Hulu, etc. directly from the internet to your TV. But you can also use the Photocast app to throw photos and video directly from your smartphone straight onto the TV. It's a very, very easy way to do it, so I'd really recommend this app. If you're serious about your photos, you might also want to consider downloading an alternative to the stock camera app on your phone, especially with iOS, and there are some really good photo apps out there that give you some additional functionality that you don't get with the standard camera app on the iPhone. This particular example here is called Camera Plus, and it gives you a variety of different functions such as a continuous flash, touch exposure, better zoom, and a number of other shooting modes and filters that you just don't get on iOS as standard. Now this is one of many that you can get out there. There's another one called Camera Plus, P-L-U-S, as opposed to the plus sign, and this has a feature that I particularly like, which is in video mode you can change the focal length. You could be focusing on the horizon and then change the focus right into macro mode and focus on a flower right in front of the camera. And that's something that, again, the stock app just can't do. So if you like this, please leave a comment below, and if you've got any suggestions on anything else you'd like to see videos on, again, please leave a comment.